Born in Holyoke, Massachusetts on March 24, 1968, Lisa Zier was the cherished daughter of George and Diane. Her siblings, David, Lynn, and Sharon, were part of her close-knit family. In 1974, the Zier family relocated to Agawam, Massachusetts. Lisa's academic journey culminated in her graduation from Agawam High School in 1986, where she showcased her musical talent, playing the tenor saxophone and flute in the concert band. Additionally, she served as a drum majorette for the school's marching band for a period of 2 years. Lisa's zeal for writing was evident in her work for the school newspaper, as well as the literary magazine. Post-high school, she earned membership into the prestigious National Honor Society and the American Field Service. In 1990, she graduated from Westfield State College with a degree in elementary education. Embedded in her community, Lisa was a faithful member of the Sacred Heart Church, imparting religious education in the confraternity of Christian doctrine classes. Lisa's love for the arts was expressed through her drawings, which she generously gifted to friends and family. Maintaining her family ties and friendships as a young adult, Lisa enjoyed the company of her boyfriend Blair, who co-owned a house that served as a social hub for their circle of friends. Her professional journey led her to a role as a teacher's aide in Agawam Middle School's special education department. The modest income from this role necessitated additional work, leading her to secure a position as a clerk at Brittany Card and Gift Shop. Lisa Zier, a 24-year-old teacher for special needs students, had an interesting career trajectory. In addition to her teaching job, she had also been a part of the Perry Lane Camp team for 4 consecutive summers, a project specifically designed for the Agawam residents. April 15, 1992, seemed like an ordinary day for Lisa, with Easter just around the corner. After a fulfilling day at school, she drove to her secondary job at Brittany's Card and Gift Shop in Agawam, where she was scheduled to work until 9 p.m. The young woman, easily recognizable with her dark curly hair, freckles, and striking blue eyes, spent the majority of her shift inflating balloons with helium. Shoppers bustled around the store, filling their carts with Easter-themed gifts and decorations. Around 5:30 p.m., an unexpected visitor walked in, Lisa's sister, Lynn. It was a rare opportunity for the siblings to reconnect, discussing Lisa's work and her ambitions for the future. After a pleasant 30-minute chat, Lynn departed, satisfied that her sister was doing well. The next morning, however, a sense of dread permeated the atmosphere. Lisa's co-worker, Sophia Maynard, arrived as usual to open the store. Spotting Lisa's white Chevy Geostorm in the parking lot and the shop's open sign still displayed, she instantly felt a wave of unease. It was clear that something was amiss. Upon arrival at the premises, Sophia found the front door ajar and the interior illuminated. Soft melodies from a radio floated through the air. She called out for Lisa, but her echoes were met with silence. As she approached the cash register, a chilling sight greeted her. Lisa's purse and car keys were abandoned. Venturing into the storeroom, Sophia discovered an unsettling scene. The back door was hanging open and numerous boxes were scattered about, as if knocked over in a hurry. Panic seized Sophia, prompting her to flee to Alvin's sandwich shop across the street. "Something's amiss, alert the police," she cried out. In no time, law enforcement officers descended onto the scene. Evidence suggesting a struggle was unearthed. Shoe prints adorned the rear door, and traces of blood were found in the storeroom. The police deduced that Lisa had likely been dragged through the back exit and into a nearby alleyway. As part of their investigation, the police confiscated 2 doors and a card rack. Intriguingly, though, the cash register remained untouched, ruling out the possibility of robbery. Assisted by the Massachusetts State Police and the FBI, local officers embarked on an exhaustive search of the Westfield River's shores and depths, both on foot and by helicopter. Despite their relentless efforts, no sign of Lisa was found. Lisa failed to report to her job at Agawam Middle School. a circumstance so out of the ordinary that it led to the school alerting her mother. This prompted her family to initiate a search for her. According to a police officer, he noticed the store's lights still illuminated at around 3 a.m., a few hours prior to Sophia's arrival. Despite this observation, he didn't relay it due to his task of transporting a prisoner. Lisa's last known interaction was with the neighboring carpet store's owner approximately at 7:35 p.m., about 90 minutes before her shift concluded. They both shared their frustration over the parking issues at the shopping center, which were the result of patrons utilizing its lot for the adjacent bowling alley, rather than the center's stores. Before parting ways, he warned Lisa about the potential dangers of confronting drivers over the issue, citing the unpredictable nature of some individuals. The store's last recorded transaction occurred at 8:20 p.m. A subsequent customer arrived at the store around 9:05 p.m., only to find it deserted. She recalled hearing a noise emanating from the store's rear, but decided against investigating. This suggests that Lisa's disappearance occurred between the final transaction at 8:20 p.m. and the subsequent customer's arrival slightly past 9 p.m. On April 17th, the Agawam Police Department, represented by Lieutenant Robert Campbell, addressed the media, expressing skepticism about the likelihood of Lisa simply straying from the store. The case was elevated to a suspected abduction due to the absence of any other plausible explanations. 3 days into Lisa's disappearance, on Easter Sunday, April 19th, the community rallied in support of her family. All 12 churches in Agawam distributed white ribbons to their congregants, a symbol of hope for Lisa's safe return. Later the same day, in the early hours of approximately 2 a.m., a man walking his dog along a muddy trail in a forest approximately 4 miles from the gift shop made a grim discovery. He found what seemed to be the partially clothed remains of a young woman. The attire and a charm bracelet on the wrist of the woman led to her swift identification as Lisa Zier. A closer examination revealed Lisa had sustained 7 stab wounds in the areas of her shoulder and throat, some penetrating over an inch deep, and an additional knife injury on her upper left leg. Her light blue denim skirt and blood-stained white blouse were found displaced toward her ankles. Indications of defensive wounds on her hands suggested Lisa had resisted her attacker. A subsequent autopsy corroborated the initial speculation that she had been the victim of a male assailant. Upon conducting a thorough investigation, the authorities found traces of male DNA and blood on the victim's apparel and body. Not long after, Agawam Police Detective Wayne Macy made his way with haste to the Zier residence, apprehensive of his task at hand. He was conscious that any delay might cause him to lose his resolve, thus leaving the daunting task of delivering the tragic news to Lisa's family to someone else. He pondered over the most respectful way to inform them of Lisa's untimely demise, but as it turned out, a euphemism was unnecessary. Upon his arrival, Lisa's mother, who had already inferred the dreadful news from his presence, greeted him at the door. Lisa's funeral was held at the Sacred Heart Church, drawing a crowd of over 900 attendees. Following the tragedy, Joseph O'Neill, proprietor of Brittany's Card and Gift Shop, made the difficult decision to permanently shut down the establishment. The thought of Lisa's abduction from the store, coupled with his sorrow over her tragic end, solidified his choice, which he had been contemplating for a while. In the aftermath of the crime, a wave of fear swept across the town, prompting numerous young women from Agawam and nearby localities to enroll in self-defense classes. They also insisted on having company while walking to their cars at night. Upon the unfortunate discovery of Lisa's remains, there was a significant surge in personal safety measures taken in the community. Over 300 women swiftly procured permits for carrying firearms or mace. To further ensure public safety, police initiated a protocol to check in at businesses operating during late hours. The case was assigned to all 8 members of Agawam Police Department's Detective Bureau, and additional resources were provided by the FBI. Given the close proximity of the crime scene to the state border, the Connecticut State Police were also enlisted in the investigation. The investigation team worked tirelessly, with shifts often exceeding 18 hours, 7 days a week. Numerous residents offered potential leads, one of which pointed the investigators in the direction of a certain Gary Shera. The origin of this lead can be traced back to Noel Deslauriers, a 22-year-old nursing student from Longmeadow. Residing with her parents at the time of Lisa's tragic end, Noel found herself deeply affected and engrossed by Lisa's case. Every day, she was engrossed in the televised coverage of an ongoing case, as officers tirelessly hunted for the offender. In January 1993, 9 months later, Noel found herself in a client's home, working as a home health aide, when a breaking news alert interrupted the regular broadcasting. It was a fresh local case, unfolding in the public eye. The investigators were in the process of questioning a man claiming his infant son had been kidnapped. Noel recognized the man. He was Gary Shera, a former classmate and brief romantic interest from their days at Longmeadow High School in 1986. A few days after the unexpected television encounter, Noel was taken aback to receive a call from Gary himself, inviting her to dinner. They had lost touch since their high school days, but her memories of Gary were warm and she accepted his invitation. They agreed to meet at the Collegian Court, a renowned restaurant and banquet hall in Chicopee, Massachusetts. Over dinner, Gary produced a photograph of his infant son from his wallet. Ultimately, the riddle of the boy's disappearance was unraveled a month later when law enforcement discovered Gary's son residing with his mother in Seattle, on the other side of the country. What was initially perceived as a kidnapping case abruptly transformed into a complex custody dispute. Gary Shera, previously unknown to the Agawam police, was suddenly thrust into the limelight when his wife, Joyce McDonald, made a shocking accusation through her lawyer. Joyce claimed that Gary was the one who had taken Lisa's life and was obsessively fixated on the case. Given that Gary had no criminal record and there was a complete absence of evidence tying him to the crime, the police were taken aback. The investigation, from its commencement, had been inundated with vengeful allegations from ex-wives and ex-girlfriends who were determined to implicate their past partners in the crime. Joyce's claim was swiftly categorized as another such allegation and was thus dismissed. Even Joyce's own family refused to lend credence to her accusations, largely due to her long-standing battle with alcoholism. According to news reports, at least one family member was certain that Joyce was merely exhibiting the erratic behavior of an intoxicated individual. As the weeks and months passed without the identification of a clear suspect, local residents gradually let down their guard. Years elapsed with no further similar crimes, reinforcing this false sense of security. Unsettlingly, however, the perpetrator appeared to have melted into the shadows, still at large. Mark Faw commenced his involvement in the case from its inception in 1993, serving as an Agawam police officer. His duties, performed during the 4 p.m. to midnight shift, consisted of managing incoming calls and meticulously reviewing the copious data surrounding Lisa's tragic death. By 2001, his recent promotion to detective surgeon saw him assuming responsibility for Lisa's case, an undertaking he was resolute to revive following the retirement of the initial lead investigator. Mark conscientiously examined every detail in the case files. The allegations made by Joyce McDonald prompted Mark to request an interview with her ex-husband, Gary. Despite his initial refusal to cooperate, Gary agreed to the interview upon the second request. Gary's demeanor remained polite and amiable when he arrived at the Agawam police station for the interview in 2002. However, his cordiality waned when Mark requested a DNA sample to exonerate him, leading to an unexpected refusal. Gary declined to provide the sample, citing fears of undisclosed cloning attempts. Simultaneously, Lisa's family remained vigilant, consistently pressing the police for answers. Zier, Lisa's mother, sought public attention by appearing on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Although this exposure generated a plethora of new leads, none proved beneficial. Undeterred, Lisa's mother organized charitable golf tournaments to fund college scholarships and participated in candlelight vigils to honor her daughter's memory. In a display of unwavering determination, she proclaimed to the press, "We want people to know that we will not forget, we will not give up." She harbored the hope that someone, privy to information, would muster the bravery to speak out. By March 2015, Noelle Delorier found herself isolated amidst the chaos of a tumultuous divorce. Bereft, she retreated into solitude for several months, until a friend extended an invitation to a high school reunion dinner. It was at this gathering that she encountered Gary Shara. The two engaged in conversation throughout the night, and this encounter soon blossomed into a relationship. Noelle was convinced she had finally found her ideal partner in Gary. His stable employment as a shuttle driver for Enterprise Rental at the neighboring Bradley International Airport in Connecticut was one of the many attributes that captivated her. His fondness for animals, coupled with his remarkable way with children, appealed to Noelle, although she suspected he might be overcompensating for the absence of his own son, who resided with relatives in Seattle. Gary, much like the fictional character Bruce Wayne, was an orphan with a profound affinity for Batman movies. This passion was evident in his collection of Batman-themed T-shirts. Gary's life had been one of instability until his adoptive parents took him in after a series of unsuccessful placements in foster homes in California. During Gary's high school years, his family relocated to Western Massachusetts. It wasn't long after he and Noelle began their romantic relationship that she started to observe peculiarities in his demeanor. Gary seemed to exhibit a noticeable level of anxiety in crowded environments. This was evident when they attended the Boston Marathon, and he adamantly refused to cross through the police checkpoint, his face pale with fear. As time progressed, Noelle started to question if Gary's avoidance was not towards the crowds, but rather the police. On one occasion, Noelle asked Gary to assist with driving her wheelchair-dependent patient to a local country club for the senior prom. After the event, the young girl struggled to navigate a disability ramp, almost falling from her chair. Gary was quick to intervene, preventing her from a potentially harmful fall onto the concrete sidewalk. While the patient was unharmed, protocol dictated that Noelle call 911. However, upon their arrival, Gary was nowhere to be found. It was later discovered that he had concealed himself behind the transportation van while the officers were questioning Noelle about the incident. Fast forward to 2016, law enforcement agencies were cracking one unsolved case after another, aided significantly by advancements in DNA technology. In Lisa's case, this meant they could create a digital composite of the suspect, a man of European descent with a smattering of freckles, dark eyes, and hair either black or dark brown. District Attorney Anthony Galuni has stated that in light of a novel forensic breakthrough, all previously gathered evidence and leads in the ongoing case are undergoing a thorough examination. The cutting-edge technology we have employed is at the forefront of the industry. This advancement has reignited the zeal of State Police Trooper Noel Pack and Detective Sergeant Mark Foe, who have resumed their meticulous review of the voluminous case files. Their attention is now concentrated on 11 suspects who align with the updated digital composite and had previously declined to cooperate by providing a DNA sample. After presenting the case before a grand jury, Galuni was successful in obtaining a court order that permits the compulsory collection of DNA samples from any uncooperative suspects, including one Gary Shara. Consequently, on September 13, 2017, Trooper Noel Pack proceeded to Shara's residence in West Springfield, Massachusetts. Shara resided with a co-tenant in a 2-bedroom apartment, located on the ground floor of a sizable 2-family dwelling. Upon reaching the front door, Pack informed the co-tenant of his intention to meet with Shara. The gentleman informed Noel that Gary was currently unavailable, but assured him he would pass on the message. Later in the day, Gary reached out to Noel, unexpectedly asking if he could spend the night at her place. Noel was somewhat bewildered by the request. It was out of character for Gary to stay over during the weekdays when he had work. However, Gary explained his predicament. The relentless traffic congestion around his residence due to the influx of visitors attending the nearby Big E Fair. His concern was that this could potentially make him late for work the following morning. Accepting his explanation, Noelle welcomed Gary to her home about 20 minutes later, and they enjoyed a tranquil evening together with dinner and television. The next day, Noelle awoke before daylight, quietly preparing for her workday while Gary continued to sleep. Upon returning home from a grueling 10-hour shift at 4:30 p.m., she immediately noticed a few of Gary's belongings scattered on the kitchen counter: his wallet, his wristwatch, and a small pile of coins. She attempted to contact him on his mobile phone, but it was switched off, preventing her from even leaving a voicemail. Her attention was then drawn to a clipboard resting on the coffee table. It was Gary's, and attached to it was a letter addressed to Noelle in his handwriting. Here is a slightly modified version of his words, altered to ensure conformity with YouTube's guidelines. "You are going to find out some awful things about me today. They will tell you I abducted, assaulted, and took the life of a young woman approximately 25 years ago. It is true, all of it. I had no intention of taking her life when I grabbed her, but events spun out of my control. And in the eyes of the law, it is all the same. I have never regretted anything so much. I always knew one day it would catch up to me, and now it has. I received a text from my roommate last night that the state police were at the house with important papers for me. That will be a warrant to take DNA, and that will send me away for life. I have never really been or felt normal. From a young age, I was fascinated by abduction. I could never keep it too far from my mind for long. On that fateful day, I let myself do something terrible. I have never forgiven myself for that. I also never did anything of the like again. I hated what happened. I despised myself. I thought of turning myself in hundreds of times over the years, but I am truly a coward. Today will all end. I will either take my own life or face the music as it were." Gary Shera. Contained within the subsequent 2 pages were Shera's final will and testament, together with a letter addressed to Lisa's family. In his letter, Shera expressed deep regret for his actions, acknowledging that no amount of apologies would suffice for the life he had taken, their daughter and sibling. He penned, "I neither anticipate nor warrant your forgiveness, but it is my hope that understanding my identity and my departure may provide you with some semblance of closure and tranquility. I am profoundly remorseful." Initially, Noelle found it hard to accept. She surmised that he was experiencing a mental breakdown, convincing himself that he had committed such a horrific crime. Despite her doubts, Noelle knew she was obligated to hand over the letter to the authorities. She hastily got into her vehicle and headed for the Massachusetts State Police Barracks in Westfield. Upon arrival, she rushed into the station, requesting to confer with someone handling Lisa Zier's case. Investigators were taken aback when she presented the letters. They had anticipated that DNA would lead them to the culprit, but never envisaged receiving a confession prior to the completion of a DNA test. The police questioned her throughout the night, posing countless inquiries. The most pressing question of all being the whereabouts of Shera. Noelle expressed fear that he may have ended his own life, possibly hanging himself somewhere, but in the same breath confessed that her love for him remained. In the quiet town of Agawam, the seasoned detective, Mark Foe, received an urgent call from the state police. Without a moment's hesitation, he dove into his patrol car and rushed to the barracks to peruse the letters in question personally. Immersed in silence, he carefully parsed each word. The letters did not portray a comprehensive confession as Shera had left the crime specifics to the imagination. However, it was evident to the experienced detective that this was Shera's attempt at a catharsis. Mark Foe's mind wandered back to a conversation he had with Joyce McDonald's family in Seattle. They had shared that Joyce had received a music box, identical to those sold at Brittany's card and gift shop, from Shera on the tragic night of Lisa's demise. With this new lead, detectives traced Shera's cell phone, following its GPS coordinates to Stratford Springs, Connecticut. As the clock struck 10 p.m., the police discovered his black Honda Civic abandoned in the parking lot of Johnson Memorial Hospital. Shara was nowhere to be found, but he had left behind a note on the dashboard. To whomever finds my body, I apologize for any psychological trauma incurred. All Mass State Police, thank you. A few hours earlier, Shara had ingested a substantial amount of ibuprofen. Fear quickly set in, and he sought help at the emergency room where his stomach was pumped, and he was kept overnight for observation in the critical care unit. Detectives soon arrived, and Shara was arrested as a fugitive from justice. Meanwhile, outside her home, Noel anxiously waited as investigators meticulously searched each room for clues. Items such as Shara's toothbrush and a used insulin syringe, necessary for his diabetes management, were taken into custody. The investigators conducted an extensive search that included the well beneath the house and even the cereal boxes stored in the kitchen cabinet. Ultimately, the DNA results were indisputable. Saliva collected from Shara's toothbrush linked him to a crime that had been committed decades earlier. In 2017, Shara, then 48, was extradited from Connecticut to Massachusetts, where he was formally charged with murder, aggravated assault, and abduction. The following months were challenging for Noel. It took her considerable time to muster the courage to visit Shara at the Hampton County Correctional Center. She sat patiently on one side of a plexiglass partition, waiting for Shara, now garbed in a red jumpsuit, to arrive and take a seat on the other side. He tried to initiate light conversation over the jailhouse phone, commenting on the not-so-bad food and the books his brother had sent him. Listening to him for a few minutes, Noel finally let loose her pent-up anger. Shara simply stared back at her blankly, without uttering a word. In 2019, at the age of 50, Gary Shara changed his plea to guilty. Consequently, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.